Okay, so this is going to be a pretty interesting one. iOS 14 will only be unveiled in June, but we've actually had a ton of leaks on it already, big ones as well, so without any further ado, here's everything we know about iOS 14 so far, and we actually know quite a lot, plus a few more details on the AirPods 3 as well. So get those snacks ready, sit back, relax, and enjoy. To get 70% off of NordVPN and support the channel, simply use the link below or the coupon code ZOTNord. Okay, so when it comes to iOS updates, we haven't really had a major update since iOS 7. iOS 7, which launched in 2013, changed the design entirely. And since then, we've mostly only had performance improvements and tweaks. iOS 13 did introduce dark mode, so this was indeed the first major change since iOS 7, but other than that, we didn't really get any big changes, or at least not changes that the average consumer would easily notice. And I'm not talking about genre here. And iOS 14 would be pretty much just like that all over again. So iOS 14 will focus on more performance improvements and more small tweaks with a few big upgrades. The first iOS 14 leak came back in January, and French website iPhoneSoft reported that iOS 14 will actually support the exact same devices that iOS 13 did. So this means that the iPhone SE will be supported, the iPhone 6s, and everything newer, as well as the iPod Touch 7th generation. However, iPadOS is said to be dropping support for the iPad mini 4, unfortunately, the iPad Air 2, meaning that those iPads will no longer run iPadOS 14. So you need an iPad mini 5 or newer, an iPad Air 3 or newer, an entry-level iPad 5th generation or newer, or an iPad Pro, all models being supported here. And according to Mark Gurman from Bloomberg, Apple is actually considering letting their users switch to third-party apps as default apps. For example, switching to Spotify as the main music app, using Gmail as the default emailing app, or Chrome as the default web browser. You can already do this on the Mac, so I do think that giving users these options would be a good choice for the users, but not for Apple. So as long as Apple makes it easier for people to move out of their ecosystem, many will switch to Android, because let's be honest, Android does offer quite a few advantages over Apple, just like Apple offers quite a few advantages over Android. And for some people, Android is the better option. So I really do think that this actually cuts both ways. However, I do believe that overall, this is the best approach. I can see why not being able to use Gmail or Spotify as the default apps might be frustrating for some, so I fully support this switch. On top of this, Mark Gurman reports that Apple is even considering adding Spotify support to the HomePod, which is currently restricted to just using Apple Music. Again, I do see why they might want to do this, because sales of the HomePod haven't been great, so supporting Spotify might boost sales considerably, especially supporting Spotify through Siri. And if they add the ability to sync with an Android device, which at this point it is actually looking quite likely, well, in that case, the HomePod might be coming back when it comes to sales, hopefully. And even though this is not directly related to iOS, 95Mac have actually managed to find snippets of code in iOS 14 that mention a blood oxygen level meter in the next Apple Watch, or to be more precise, in watchOS 7. We'll definitely make a more detailed video on just the Apple Watch Series 6, so definitely subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to see that video as soon as it comes out. But from the looks of it, the Series 6 will be getting some pretty major updates. Once again, more about that in that video. Then 95Mac also managed to find some references in iOS 14 and iPadOS 14 on some upcoming iPad keyboards, very likely for the iPad Pro. And these are actually some pretty big updates, because they will actually be adding full mouse support or trackpad support on the keyboards themselves. So yes, Apple is actually adding proper mouse support in iOS 14. They did actually add mouse support in iOS 13, but it was only found in accessibility options. And you actually had this massive dot that didn't have a right click, so functionality was heavily limited. However, with iOS 14, Apple will be expanding this functionality and implementing full-on mouse support, just like on macOS. So, full-on mouse support in iOS 14, and like I said before, they're also launching a first-party keyboard for the iPads that also has a trackpad included. This is interesting. So, Apple has finally realized that, hey, maybe Microsoft's Surface Pro approach was the right way to go. I've actually used the Surface Pro 6 myself for about 2 months or so, heavily, and I absolutely loved it. So my only complaint was the occasional lag, and the overall touchscreen experience was pretty bad on Windows. But if Apple can pull this off, we might just have the perfect 2-in-1 device. This leak also found that Apple is including different icons for the mouse, such as an arrow and a hand for when you're hovering on top of links. Oh, and Apple is also said to be adding haptic feedback to the trackpad on the iPad's keyboard, which means that we might be getting a very similar experience to what we currently have on the Macs, which is pretty awesome because Macs are well known to have the very best trackpad on any laptop on the market. So I'm quite confident that Apple will do a very good job both OS-wise and hardware-wise when it comes to this. Next up, Mac Rumors reports that Apple is exploring ways of adding custom voice synthesizers in iOS. Long story short, we could have custom Siri voices. So in case you're wondering why this might be a big deal, well, it's not just because we might be getting an alien or a robot voice, which would be quite cool for Siri, but also multiple languages could be supported this way in the future. Some of you might know that I'm Romanian myself, and Romanian language isn't supported by Siri. So yeah, it's been almost 9 years since Siri was launched, and it's looking quite unlikely that Romanian and many other languages will be added in the future. So to solve this issue, having a Siri voice API might actually allow for third-party developers to implement more and more languages. And then another report coming from Mac Rumors claims that Apple will be adding handwriting recognition for the Apple Pencil, and this functionality will work with pretty much any text input fields in iOS. So if you write anything with the Apple Pencil, that iPad will convert that written text into actual typed text. Fun fact, Apple already had this feature back with the first iPad. And no, I'm not talking about the iPad that launched in 2010. I'm talking about the Apple Newton PDA from 1987. Handwriting recognition is something that we already have on smartphones, such as Samsung's Galaxy Note line. However, handwriting is always a tricky one because you see everyone has a different handwriting. And some are just so bad, maybe like mine, that are almost impossible to decipher. On top of this, Mac Rumors reports that Apple would also have a functionality called Magic Fill, which will allow users to just draw a shape, which will then be automatically filled by iOS. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm not sure where you will be able to draw those shapes. Like if you go on a text box and you draw a square, would that fill in a square text? Obviously not, so it will have to be restricted to just drawing apps, but it will still be a pretty cool feature to have. Quite a few third-party drawing apps, like I believe Procreate and Affinity Photo, they already have those features included. And Mac Rumors is also reporting that Apple is now testing a few new features for iMessage, such as mentions and also retracting messages. Now, mentions would be when you add someone, and that person would then get a notification even if they're not part of that specific chat. So this is actually very useful in a busy group conversation, for example. And retracting messages, you all probably know what that means. Just like on Instagram, you would be able to undo sending a message, which is pretty awesome, but I'm guessing Apple will also implement a timer or something. We don't actually know to what extent that will be. So yeah, there we go. These were the small leaks. Now get ready for the big ones. Mac Rumors reports once again that Apple is working on a dedicated fitness app. Yeah, a dedicated fitness app. And no, this will not be an update to the current activity app. This will be something entirely new. Apparently this will be a universal app that will work on iOS 14, watchOS 7, as well as tvOS 14. And it will work alongside the existing activity app by providing users with guided workouts, essentially videos and tutorials on how to do different moves and train different parts of the body. So yeah, pretty much a standalone fitness app. Now, this would be a massive update. I've actually tried quite a few workout apps myself. And unfortunately, they're good. Some of them are quite good, but they're also very expensive. So most of them are free, but they also have a subscription that you kind of have to get anyways. And that subscription can cost a few $100s or pounds in the UK per year. So yeah, Apple's attempt would be free with no ads and no in-app purchases. So yeah, this will indeed put a lot of workouts apps out of business, and I really do feel sorry about those apps and those companies, but at least this way everyone will have access to high quality workouts for free. And according to 95Mac, Apple is also developing another new app for iOS 14, codenamed Gobi, and this one will be a full AR app. Essentially a gateway to all the essential AR needs and a place for users to get more information about the world around them in AR. This is pretty awesome. I do feel like AR on iOS, even though it is the best implementation of AR that we currently have, it is still severely underused. So there are quite a few apps that do take very good use of AR, but the problem is really finding those apps. Apple does have a dedicated section for this in the App Store, but you do have to dig through the categories, so yeah, it's not the easiest thing to find. So a standalone AR app made by Apple will not only implement AR much better than most other third-party apps, as it's developed in-house by Apple, but it will also make AR easily accessible to anyone, especially if this app would come pre-installed with iOS 14, which I really think it should. 95Mac reports that Apple is currently testing integration with the Apple stores so that you can just open up the app when you walk in, and then you can see the prices and the configurations of different products floating right in the air above each device. So I'm guessing that those will include a QR code or something that the app will be able to track. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And apparently they're also testing this in Starbucks. Now, of course, that Apple could also implement all this functionality directly into the camera app itself, like, Google or Samsung have done in the past. But the thing is, this will actually clutter the app significantly. Now, in my opinion, the way they should do it is it should automatically work in the camera app for things such as the Apple Store or Starbucks. So you should get an automatic message that AR elements have been detected, and then you should be able to select if you want those elements visible on the screen or not. So a simple pop-up message. That's how I would personally do it. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you think that that's a good idea or not. Finally, according to some iOS 14 code that 95Mac managed to find, the iOS 14 home screen might finally be getting a big change. For the first time in, 13 years now since the first iPhone got launched, so apparently users might be getting the option to turn the home screen into a list view. Pretty much the same style that we currently have on the Apple Watch. Not only that, but this list view would apparently include several sorting options, such as the ability to filter applications based on unread notifications, the ability to sort them based on recent use, and more. Also, 95Mac reports that this new list view will include smart suggestions powered by Siri, such as when you go to the gym, it might recommend you to open up the music app or the new fitness app. This honestly sounds amazing. I do believe that a system that automatically suggests actions to you based on the actions that you've taken in the past is actually groundbreaking. It kind of reminds me of Google Now, but more integrated with the actual operating system. Now, Apple has kind of done this in the past with the Siri watch face on the Apple Watch. This will just be a more, bumped up version, beefed up version of essentially that. Buffed up, not beefed up. But anyways, I do believe that this list view would impact the functionality or dysfunctionality of smart Siri suggestions in a negative way. I don't really see the list view being a good idea because you can already search for apps if you really, need to find something specific easily. You can already do that. So if Apple manages to somehow implement these smart suggestions plus the on-screen widgets, which I've been wishing for so many years now, on the current home screen style, I do believe that this will be extremely well received. And 95Mac also reports that iOS 14 will be including some new gesture capabilities. They don't really mention as to how they will work, but considering that trackpad support is being added to iPadOS, it is very likely that we would see similar gestures as to what we currently have on macOS. Oh, and here's a really awesome one. Apple is set to finally implement third-party wallpaper support in the settings. So at the moment, you only get a very small selection of wallpapers to choose from. I think you get about 9 or something. And also those wallpapers, they get updated every year. So it's not like Apple's adding more, they're actually removing some of the old ones. And yeah, so you get about 9 in total or so. Now with iOS 14, you would also get the option to integrate your favorite wallpaper apps with the wallpaper selection page from the settings menu. That's pretty awesome. At least for me, I'm really looking forward to that. Now, on top of this, 95Mac also reports that we would be getting some very useful HomeKit features, such as the ability to use night shift with your lights in your own home. This will allow the lights to automatically adjust their color temperature as time passes throughout the day. Pretty awesome. Now, aside from these leaks, we've also had a few details on some of Apple's upcoming products in iOS 14. And one of these being some new headphones. Yes, some brand new headphones, not the AirPods, maybe something a bit better in terms of the sound quality. So we have this icon leak here in iOS 14 that shows what looks to be 2 pairs of over-the-head headphones. Now, Apple does indeed own Beats, and they do already make over-the-head headphones, which do already have the same functionality as the AirPods do, thanks to the W1 and the H1 chip. However, they're not Apple branded, and as most of you probably know quite well, anything that's Apple branded sells much better than something that's not. And considering how successful the AirPods have been, it is very likely that Apple would want to brand these with the AirPods name. And a new report coming from DigiTimes claims that Apple is also working on an entry-level pair of AirPods Pro, not the regular AirPods, the AirPods Pro. So an entry level, a light version of the AirPods Pro, the AirPods Pro Lite, isn't that just the regular AirPods? I mean, come on, Apple, stop splitting the lineup so much. Anyways, it's looking quite likely that this report is slightly off. DigiTimes was wrong in the past before, so yeah, it's not like they have a 100% accurate track record. And if Apple is launching some new AirPods, I would honestly say that these would be an updated version of the non-Pro model. I don't see why they would release AirPod Pro Lite. You know, just with, yeah, those are the regular AirPods, very likely. But yeah, let me know in the comments what do you guys think the regular AirPods are getting and what features are they missing at the moment. And also your thoughts on iOS 14 in general and everything that I talked about, because there were so many leaks. And yeah, so far it's looking like a pretty good update. Honestly, much bigger than I was expecting, especially with that list view, or at least those Siri suggestions for the home screen. Pretty looking forward, pretty excited, and also looking forward to those. If you want to support the channel and also get something pretty cool in return, then definitely consider becoming a member by hitting that join button down below. So it only costs £0.99 a month, which is actually less than a cup of coffee, and you not only support the channel and everything that we do here at ZONEofTECH, but you also get access to some pretty cool badges next to your name that evolve the longer you've been a member for. And everyone can see the badges, you can see them, all the viewers can see them, I can see them, so it makes your comments stand out much easier to me. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely consider subscribing and also hitting the bell icon so that you get notified whenever a brand new cool tech videos like this one, hopefully, comes out. So yeah, this has been pretty much it for this one. So thank you for watching. I'm Daniel. This was an awkward outro. But yeah, I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. We're approaching 1 million very fast. So yeah, stay tuned for something special. ZONEofTECH.